Let me see if the music works correctly here. I've been trying to get this. All right. Joining us. I hope this is not an old theme, too, sir. All right. Joining us is a former TNA World Heavyweight Champion, two-time TNA World Tag Champ, and IWGP Tag Team Champ. He's finishing up his run with TNA to join Global Force Wrestling, Jeff Jarrett's new promotion. Let's welcome Magnus, or as he will be going by now in GFW, Nick Aldis, back to the Pain Clinic. Thank you so much for the time today, Nick.
Yeah, no worries, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Man, it was great. It was a little over a year and a half ago when you were crowned the TNA champion, and you ran with it for a good 4 months. How was that experience there when you were TNA, when you were like the pinnacle, the top guy?
It was cool. You know, it was funny because honestly, I mean, I know it's easy for me to say now, but you know, earlier on in that year in 2013, I had been in a sort of similar situation to how I was now, where I was contemplating moving on, and then circumstances were such, and the deal was right, and I stuck around. And one of the reasons why was because I just felt like I was kind of in line for the title, and I just thought, well, at that point, you know, I'd given 4.5, 5 years to the company, and I was like, well, you know, I want to see it through now and win the title, because I felt like it was in my grasp. So that, you know, so in that respect, it was cool that my instincts were right, and I trusted my instincts, and I, you know, because I knew that the company kind of believed in me, and it was just cool because I'd worked my way from the bottom of the company all the way through. I'd worked, you know, virtually everybody, you know, right the way through. I wasn't handed the title, you know, by any means. I'd really worked hard for it and earned it, you know, through a lot of critics and through a lot of hard work, and sort of earned my stripes with everybody. So it was kind of that was a good feeling in that respect. You know, where it went after that, maybe not so much, but you know, at the time it was certainly a good achievement. And obviously the response from the UK was more than I expected, to be sure. I really didn't think that it would mean as much as it to the UK fans, but yeah, it did. It was cool.
Yeah, and that's where you started in the UK as a wrestler, and also you were on a TV show, much like in the United States. We had the show Gladiators. Well, I can't remember what they called it over in England. It was a little bit different.
It was cool. It was just called Gladiators in England. But here it was American Gladiators.
That's right.
You guys like American in front of stuff. God bless America.
Yeah, it's July 4th. Yes, American Gladiators. That's true. And you got your start there, but you were wrestling before you went and did that, right?
Yeah. I broke in with the Knight family, who are more well known now on account of Paige becoming such a big star. She's the youngest daughter of Ricky Knight and Julia, who goes by Soraya Knight. And I broke in with them at 17, and then I sort of, you know, went to as many camps for theirs as I could, and sort of got my feet wet with a few shows for them, and then started going to another school down in London just because it was running more frequently, so I could go train more often. And that's where I met Doug Williams. He then kind of spoke up for me to a few promoters, and then, you know, by sort of 18 or like half, you know, about, I think I was 18, I started working more or less time for Brian Dixon and other independents in England.
Yeah, but Doug Williams, we are huge fans of his. We got to meet him when they were in Rochester, when you guys came to Rochester with TNA Impact Wrestling, and we followed him from Ring of Honor and everywhere he's worked. He's always been highly sought after, and that's great. And he's a good guy, definitely, to be teamed up with, you know, in the beginning there.
Yeah. Oh, God, without a doubt. I mean, like, I probably would have sank big time in TNA had it not been for being teamed up with Doug, because I wasn't ready, and I knew that. You know, I was smart enough. I think, you know, the guys who succeed in the business have self-awareness. That's something that I think that, you know, some people need to realize, that, you know, sometimes when these fans say about certain things about certain talents, it's like the ones that will stick around are the ones who know that themselves, and then they do what they can to sort of remedy it, you know. And I certainly saw the advantage of being tagged up with Doug, because it allowed me to work on the areas I wasn't too great at, which was just reps, really, just technical wrestling, just because I just didn't have a lot of, you know, I hadn't been in the business long enough, you know, working with good enough guys. But what I did have was, you know, ability on the microphone and charisma and stuff. So we complemented each other very well. It set me up really well.
Nick, the press release came out on Monday that you've signed with Global Force Wrestling. I know you guys have quite a loop coming up next weekend. I guess just talk about, you know, being in a part of something new, and how much you're looking forward to working once again with the Jarretts.
I understand that that Jeff obviously is very synonymous with TNA in the sense that he founded the company, but really, the TNA of the modern of the last few years really hasn't had any of Jeff's fingerprints on it. And I would make the argument that the glory days of TNA, if you want to call them that, were when Jeff was steering the ship. I'm certainly not trying to be overly controversial when I say that, but that's the reality of it. That I knew when Jeff left the company that there was a huge imbalance then of. There was too many, there wasn't enough of a wrestling guy experience in the office and in the booking and in that all that sort of thing. Jeff has always done really right by me. He was someone who, even though it was Dixie, who I have to admit, Dixie was the one who really sort of saw something in me from the beginning and wanted to hire me and nurture me and turn me into something. Jeff was the one who later on down the road, when there was numerous management changes at TNA, was the guy who kept saying, not doing enough with him. Like he's a player, and then he basically took me to India and proved it and said, you're going to be the guy in India, and I'm going to use it to show everyone what they've been missing, by not doing the right thing with you. And that was, and from there on, it was like I had a relationship with him where I basically said, if I can come through for him at some point, then I'm going to do that.
I was going to say, one of the things I was going to mention to you is you went through a lot of regime changes there. You saw the Hogan Bischoff era come in, and that really shook up everybody who was there, and a lot of people left at that time. Was that just kind of like, it wasn't a blindsided thing, I don't think, but it definitely, all of a sudden it became a change in focus in the company. And that didn't help much with morale, I'm sure.
It was funny because I remember I was there. I was a big part of 2009 for TNA, and that was my first year, and I was weaved to the fabric pretty quickly, and I remember we were working with Beer for most of 2009, who were the greatest act that TNA ever created. Well, they created themselves, but two phenomenally talented guys, and they were really the guys who helped us into that angle, working with them through the thing, just sort of really put us on the map in TNA and made us really sort of weaved us into the fabric of the show. And the main event mafia was the original main event mafia was cooking, and there was a lot of star power and things were really building. And I remember specifically there was a meeting somewhere through the middle of 2009 where they said our ratings are the highest they've ever been on Spike, and we're only a few points away from SmackDown, and this and that, and by the way, the company is finally turning a profit. Let's all give ourselves a big pat on the back, right? And everyone was like, "Wow, this is great." And it wasn't not 3 months later that it was Hulk Hogan is coming, Eric Bischoff is coming, and and I remember I was excited about it because I was like, "Wow, that is huge." I just had I didn't foresee that coming. And then unfortunately, it not to say not. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but within a few months, the general feeling on that was, 180 degrees from that original feeling, which was just because they just kind of, I don't know, they just took a dump over all of the fan base. I thought they just said, they basically said, here's all the things that you like, that have separated us and carved out, our audience, and we don't like those, so we don't care what you think.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking I haven't been the head of a major company, but I don't know if that's wise. You know what I mean? And I just had to sit back, and then obviously, they obviously did what they thought was right, but I don't know. And then after that, it just felt like there were just a lot of attempts on Dixie's end to sort of, for quick fixes, and a lot of us really were of the same belief that we should just stayed the course because it was growing, a healthy rate, slowly and surely. You can't go too fast because then you reach critical mass, which is, I think, what happened.
Yeah, I think when they did the live show, that was a little premature. They go up against Raw for 1 week, and I think that might have showed some cracks in the armor from everything that was, all the signings and everything. Which kind of brings me to next is after that rumbled out a little bit, you and Samoa Joe had a good couple of years together in TNA, and that really elevated you in the company. I think, at least personally, I think that moved you up. It showed people you could work, and you guys worked great together. And I thought that was my most exciting time in your career for me to watch you.
I agree, and I appreciate that, and I agree with you. I think that, and that was another thing that came about really by mistake. You know, it was just one of those things where they just like threw us together because they just went like, oh, well, you know, you guys keep saying that you need to, you know, that you're not being used properly, or you're not getting enough chance to showcase yourself and everything. We'll always put you together. And at first, I was so intimidated because I just thought like, geez, like Joe's going to hate this. You know, like he's too good to be teamed up with, you know, somebody like me. And then. But I was such a fan of Joe that I went to him with, like, off the bat with, like, all these ideas, like, oh, we could combine, like, these moves that you do with these moves I do, and we can make all these, and, like, he just, like, I remember him just looking at me and just being, like, great, you know, like, yeah, like, I could tell he was thinking, like, wow, he's really into this, and I think my enthusiasm then kind of rubbed off on him, and then once we started to get some steam, and people started going, like, man, it's a really unusual team, but it really just works. Like, it's one of those things that just worked. Like, then he really got into it. And then we, you know, that was another thing that was just, like, prematurely cut short, you know, that had so much more, had so much more mileage to it that just kind of got cut short. I think it became a victim of our own success, maybe.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And I mean, people loved it, and they did, but it did, like I said, it did help elevate you up a lot in the company, and which was great. You know, and you guys had some great matches, and then you guys, you know, I mean, obviously, you should have had like a good year-long series against each other when you broke up, but that, like you said, it was kind of cut a little bit short there. But it was an exciting time in the company, and then you of course went to the new Main Event Mafia right out of that, which I you know, was kind of like, you know, because the Aces and Eights, it was another change in direction in the company, and I think you kind of got pushed to the back a little bit, but you were in the group that came out and pretty much dominated for a while there. So I think that was an awesome part of, you know, a good progression, which led to you becoming the champion eventually because of the people you associated with that. But do you think now I was going to say, do you think that Joe leaving and going to the WWE, you think that they're going to know what to do with him? You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that's an issue. I think that, you know, clearly Triple H clearly has a great eye for talent and what works, and clearly their philosophy is shifting again in what seems to, I mean, in personal taste, looks like the right direction. I mean, you know, I woke up this morning and all I could see on my Twitter thing was stuff about Finn Balor, and, you know, Fergal's a great guy, like that. You talk about a guy who deserves it, you know what I mean, like that, you know. And then with Joe and you know, Kevin Steen, now known as Kevin Owens, it's just like, you know, it's just like it gives you faith in the sense of like if you learn your craft and keep chipping away and like plugging away at it, like, you know, that the right guys end up, you know, where they're supposed to be at the right time. You know, these are all guys in their 30s, you know, which is traditionally always when the best workers made it to the WWF, or, you know, as it was then. You know, like, I mean, like, even going back, like, DiBiase and, you know, and all these sort of guys who would come from the territories after having great runs and becoming, like, real seasoned, polished workers. It's like, now it's like guys in their 20s, you know, they you know, approach WWE once, or they go try out or whatever, and maybe they say not right now, and it's like, oh, my career's over, and it's like, no, it's just like, there's a whole art form to learn here, and,
yeah,
you know, guys like that have that belief and that sort of comfort in themselves and their own ability that they just keep going, hey, I'm going to just work wherever I work, and I'll prove to the world that, you know, I'm the best in this genre. And that's what Joe is. Joe carries himself in a way that you can't teach, and like whatever happens with it, he'll make it work. Like, and that's why I can't stress enough like how much I've learned from Joe, and honestly, like how much he's done for me at this point. You know what I mean? Because it's like, without his, not only his, you know, influence on me directly, but also his influence on me, you know, to others in the business and in the genre, like, you know, I probably wouldn't have been able to make the money I'd made in TNA for the last 2 years, you know, negotiate the contract I had and stuff like that. Like, I understand all that stuff. That's why I'm so, you know, grateful to Joe, and I'm so happy that he's finally, you know, been given the opportunity to showcase himself on the biggest stage, because that's where he belongs.
Yeah, I was going to mention your fellow countrymate there, Finn Balor, got the title very early this morning. Do you ever know him from over in England?
Well, I mean, in the interest of upsetting any Irish people listening, I wouldn't refer to him as my fellow countryman.
Oh, okay, oops, sorry.
You'll start a storm. But no, you know, Fergal I do know Fergal a little bit, and we're very, I have great affection for him. I think he's a great guy, and he's very, he's very, very friendly. Everybody, to know Fergal is to like him. We're not, super close. We never even worked together because by the time I was sort of really, sort of making a name for myself independently in the UK, he was already like going to Japan and doing a lot, and he was he very much entrenched himself in Japan, and obviously that's paid off for him because he's one of those guys. He's like made for life in Japan. You know what I mean? He can go there anytime, and because he's so well respected and admired there, and now that's parlayed into success for him at WWE, which is just goes to show that there is no a lot of people would have, and Fergal himself probably would have looked at someone like that and gone, well, there's a guy who's going to make a living outside of WWE for life. You know what I mean? Because they just would have said, well, it's not really the WWE thing, but he's carved out a niche for himself. And now that everything's shifted again, there's been, another tectonic shift in wrestling that now it's like, now it's parlayed into a great success for WWE because they're so global. So it just goes to show that, like, if you be a businessman, you know what I mean? Just keep carving out, a niche for yourself and a fan base, and good things will come.
And it certainly doesn't hurt to have friends who work other places too, who can give you a good word for you,
Absolutely, and that goes a lot. That says a lot about working the independents and getting into as many territories as you can. Like I haven't been to Japan as much as I'd like, but I have been, and Mexico and and all over Europe and stuff like that. And yeah, you're right. You think about it, and you suddenly start going like, man, like once upon a time, like me, this guy, and this guy, we're all in like a little sort of town hall with like 50 people in it, you know what I mean? And now look. So it's just one of those things.
And I guess piggybacking off, working the independents, we've seen you fairly locally a couple times recently with 2CW, and I know there you teamed with Pepper Parks. That's a team I'd like to see more. But you've worked, some of these independent shows maybe a little more as of late. Are there more guys out there? Now that Global Force has TV tapings coming up in a couple of weeks, ROH is on national cable TV. More spots for more wrestlers, and I'm sure talking about putting in a word for somebody. There's a lot more guys out there that you've seen that deserve a shot on TV as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say 2CW are a fantastic company. I've got nothing but good things to say about them. They've been very good to Mickey and I, and they run a tight ship. They run good shows. They book good talent, and that Josh and Ben and all those guys involved with 2CW are really good cats. I really do like Pepper Parks a lot. He's one of those guys who, to me, it's like, I don't know why he's, how he's not on more people's radar in some respects, but, and talk about a guy who's like, got it together mentally too, you know what I mean? Like he just gets it. It was and that's an example of, like you said before, like, knowing people, because I remember when I was first, advertised, to be working with him or whatever, I got texts from like 2 or 3 different people going, hey, Pepper's a good guy. You'll enjoy working with him. But yeah, like certainly, I'm looking forward to being, to getting to grips with more of the talent out there. I think there's a deeper talent pool than ever in wrestling all over the world, actually. But I mean, like this week, or this week, next week for I'll be on the first GFW live events in Wisconsin and Ohio and stuff, and I'm working with Tommaso Ciampa, who I've never worked with before, and then Congo Kong. So it's like, I'm looking forward to it because, again, it's like these are all fresh new opponents to me and new talent and, new stories for me to tell. And that's like what gets me going, really.
Yeah, Tommaso Ciampa.
That's a match I want to see.
I know, me too, big time. I wanted to, I know we've gone a little bit longer than I expected, but I didn't want to bring this up. The last few months you were in TNA, you've been building up this feud with James Storm, with some real life stuff thrown in with Mickey James and your son Donovan. Great drama for TV, I think it was. Has that been a blast? And did you know that you were leaving as you built this feud up?
At the beginning, no, but I had an inkling that I probably wasn't, because here's the thing, I don't want to delve too much into my sort of contract details and stuff like that, but I was lucky enough to be in a position where, the decision was mine, and that's about as much as I can divulge. And I had sort of done my best. I've been very, very loyal to the company, and I've done everything I can to help them, and they've done a lot for me as well. Conversely, everything's I've maintained a very good relationship with them, and it just came to a point where I basically said I've maximized my earning potential, and I've done everything I can do. I think I was like, after winning the title and and all of that sort of stuff, I saw what the direction they were going, and perhaps they've got to sort of do things on a bit more of a budget. Yeah. But so I took the opportunity to go, well, I'd had this conversation with them. I said, like, I've never really had any like serious feuds, serious like storylines. Like, I've always just been one of those guys who's like a competitive wrestler in that respect. Apart from when I was the sort of corporate champion type of character. Like, they had never really been involved in any sort of massive feuds apart from my feud with Joe. I said, like, and so that I pitched the story with Bram. Tom is legitimately, my best buddy. Like, we have legitimately known each other since we broke in the business, and like, I spoke up for him and legitimately helped him get hired with TNA, and loved the way that storyline panned out. I thought it was just a great angle all around. And then I was a little bit resistant to going straight into another one with James, because one of the things I had said, as far as like the storyline with Mickey and everything, was like, let's not just jump straight into another one. Let's not like run this thing into the ground. And then of course, they call and go, we've got this great idea. James is going to get involved in your match with Bram, and then you're going to run off into a thing with him. I was like, all right, well, whatever. I loved everything about the angle with James apart from the train thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of people had problems with that, just because it was so ambiguous at the end. It's
silly.
like,
It was silly. It was just I don't know what. I've said this before in other interviews, but that was one of those situations where, unfortunately, the upper management didn't show good enough self-awareness and leadership quality to be able to take other people's, to sometimes realize that just because it's your idea doesn't necessarily make it good, and I couldn't find a single person other than the person whose idea it was who liked that angle, and it was just one of those things where we just went, if that's what you want, we came up with alternatives and other ways to do it, which we thought were perhaps more believable because, but I don't know, they were hell-bent on doing it that way, and, other than that, though, and I think it bears to say that I, was very proud of the match at the pay-per-view, and even though there will be, we taped some stuff that will be now seen for the next couple of weeks on TV, and then, our finale will be in, our last appearance for TNA will be in a couple of weeks on TV, I believe. As far as like my critical last match, I think the pay-per-view match with James at Slammiversary will probably, go down as one of my best in TNA, and I was very proud of it.
And it's a good way to go out on TNA pay-per-view, that's for sure, sir. I want to thank you so much, Nick, for the time today. Nick Aldis, you can catch him Global Force Wrestling, which starts its taping next week. Thank you. So,
they're in Erie on Friday too. We'll tweet out all the information.
We will tweet out. But one last thing. Now, I don't want to go too long, but Jeff Jarrett showing up 2 weeks ago. Surprised to everybody there?
Yeah, at 100%. I can say this completely honestly, that I know for a fact that deal was like, that whole sort of situation came at the very last minute. I had no idea. I was walking around backstage, and I was actually just come out of the makeup room because I'd been talking with Mickey over something about we were getting ready to do, and I saw Cody, Kurt and Karen's kid, and I saw him, and he comes running over to me like, man, just give you a big hug. And I thought, well, maybe Kurt's got the kids, they're a very amicable relationship, all those guys. So I just thought, well, maybe the kids are with Kurt, I just didn't see him earlier. And then I saw Jeff's kids, and I kind of go like, hey guys, like, and just, I must have been one of those things where I was so used to seeing them back in the day that it didn't immediately hit me. And then I suddenly went, wait a minute, like, And then there's an SUV, like, you know, and then the window just comes down, and then there he is, and he's just looking at me with this big grin on his face. And I just looked at him, I just went, I don't even want to know.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for coming. Nick Aldis, Magnus from TNA. He's joining Global Force Wrestling, starting their tapings next weekend, I believe. And we want to thank you so much for the time today, sir, and enlightening us about everything. You know, it's very, very cool of you. And anytime you want to come back, I'd love to have you back too, sir.
Absolutely, anytime, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much for everything, and good luck with Global Force. And we'll be watching for it, because I know I have a feeling Jeff's a smart man. There's going to be TV coverage in no time, I'm sure, once things get going. So,
I agree. Well, I hope so, because that's where I've hung my hat.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the time today, and best of luck with everything. Say hi to Mickey from us. We've met her a few times, and beautiful baby Donovan too, sir.
Thank you, guys. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, we got to go to break. You are listening to the Pain Clinic on Fox Sports 1280.